right, we're ripping again on the Bitcoin bottom line. We have Harry Sudock from Griid Mining. Harry and I first became acquainted, I believe, on Clubhouse.
Yes, sir.
A lot of us plebs would get on Clubhouse about a year and a half ago, and would just talk about Bitcoin and answer a lot of really silly pleb questions. And now here we are at the Bitcoin 22 conference, which is like the most amazing Bitcoin conference I think that's ever existed, perhaps, in scale.
Yeah.
Like by a long shot.
By far.
Right, we're at all-time highs of conferences.
I mean, somebody asked me a question earlier today, and they're like, what makes this conference special, you know, versus like things that you're used to in TradFi? And it was like, everybody just sort of friends, you know, like you can talk to anybody, everybody's cool, we're all plebs here. It's we're all in this together, and it's a lot of great sharing of ideas. Even if you have competitive businesses, like we had a mining panel earlier today, and like all four of the guys that were on the panel were just like best friends. But they're also, you know, super competitive, which is fantastic.
This is so. I want to double click on miners competing with each other.
Yeah.
The great part about the competitive atmosphere among miners, which is there. We're all Bitcoiners, so we're pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Is that it's on the merits. So you can't fake being a better miner than another miner. You know,
Right.
You can't brand your way to better mining. You can't raise, you know, at a bigger valuation because you got the VC round and like that. So all you can do is produce more terahashes per second and get more Bitcoin in exchange for your computing power. And if you do the most of those, you get the most Bitcoin.
Right.
Bingo.
So along those lines, though, there's been this, like, I'd say narrative a little bit that all miners are hodling. But the reality is that miners have been able to, I guess, as more companies have gone public, there's been like this more Main Street, Wall Street attention on Bitcoin mining as a revenue generating business that doesn't have to advertise in a lot of ways, right? It doesn't have all these other overheads that traditional businesses do, right?
Yes.
So it's just a race. It's just a race between you guys and somebody else, right?
Yes.
And I don't have to name any of the other ones because there are a lot of them out there, but I'm friends with a lot of people, right, in the business. And I think it's interesting because it's like in hockey, right, they have to shake hands after the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no bitch blood. Like, it's like you're just straight up like a man.
Yep.
You lost like a man, you won like a man. That's it, right? I see mining as a very honest process there. In that regard,
Completely agree. And what's so cool and exciting is that we're in this we're in the moment where, like, for the first time there's an industry within an industry in a way that's different. So, like, you know, if you got into Bitcoin in any time in kind of the last 5 or 6 years, like, there isn't a lot of sort of differentiation amongst what you do, right? You got an exchange here and a software dev there, and, like, you know, but we were all kind of one thing. But I really do feel that over the last few years, like, mining is its own thing. And, like, there's a whole sort of knowledge ecosystem and people and business and you know, and it used to be like exchanges made all the revenue and everybody else kind of just like muddled along. But now I think that, you know, miners are sort of the second entrant to Bitcoin as a big revenue generating business.
Well, because like I think a lot of people have been concerned on this whole block subsidy valuation between what are the fees, right, and what's Bitcoin actually worth. As we're going into these halvenings, it's like, all right, is it still going to be lucrative? But at the same time, the industry, as any capitalist industry does, innovates hard, right?
Hard.
Joules per terahash, right? Immersion, chips per board, right? Total terahashes, heat dissipation, heat recycling. There's all these crazy, like, technical things that are happening right now. But I think the most old school thing that's important is getting enough power, right? So how does a Bitcoin mining company get enough power to do what they need to do? Because it's really that conversion that's the metric, right?
I'm gonna be a little glib and just say the best way to get power is to pay for it. and so, like, that's the trick, is like being able to speak the language of a power company or of a grid or of a you know, whether it's a merchant market, an ERCOT market, a, you know, captive market, a regulated market. Like, at the end of the day, like, there's a vocabulary and a language to purchasing power. And it's you know, not quite maybe as specific or technical as Bitcoin, but it's very specific and very technical, and there are people with 30, 40, 50-year careers who all they've done their whole lives is figure out really good ways to buy and structure contracts that sell power.
Right.
So it's the specialty that allows them to go super deep, just like real estate or
Exactly.
construction or minerals like oil and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. The rabbit hole, the power rabbit hole, is just as deep as sort of all of these other, technical or technical adjacent.
Right.
Technical staples.
Technical
Or
staples.
society staples.
The
Right?
reality is, though, your software and your hardware determines how much Bitcoin you're going to mine.
No
right?
doubt.
That's Bitcoin you're earning. So the power thing is completely different. You're competing for the Bitcoin. The difference is how much are you paying for that Bitcoin, and that's where the power equation is. It's more of a variable cost.
You're exactly right. This gets to the point of like, how much do you make and how much do you keep?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much you keep allows you to expand.
Yeah. So if you want to be super competitive and you want to like kind of push everybody out, you might pay a little bit more for power just to push through and get as much Bitcoin as you can.
I think we've seen that. I think like what's really interesting, and let's just like let's dial back to like late 2019, beginning 2020, pre-halving. It was the beautiful 12.5 Bitcoins per block.
Right.
And how quickly we forget. Revenue was great, and Bitcoin wasn't that high, but it was an interesting environment. And after the halving, it was rough for the mining community. The revenues came down. Right now we're generating 18 to 22 cents per terahash day, right now ish. Then it was like 7 cents right after the halving.
But here's what's interesting though for a lot of people, right? How do you get to the point where you can explain to total normies, right, that are looking at investing in a business? Hey, let's invest in a business. Hey guys, let's all let's do multifamily homes, right? Total straightforward thing. You're going to get a loan for this much. You're going to get this much in rent, all that stuff.
Yep.
Like mining is kind of like that to me in a way, where you like, okay, I need to buy a container full of ASICs. You need one container. You need like 80 ASICs to fit in your little unit, right?
Yeah.
You need this much power to run it. You need this many engines to run your nat gas or grid or whatever else with transformers, stuff like that. And it converts at this rate based on, like this many blocks per day on the pool I'm on or whatever. That's using it in an only Bitcoin-centric mindset. But you're not paying Bitcoin for power. So you have to also, on top of that, trade out of the Bitcoin or sell out of the Bitcoin at some point, right, to pay for the power, to pay for some of the stuff. Because some people don't necessarily take payment. It's not a fully Bitcoin economy yet, right?
Correct.
So that's really where I think there's a super art in between the good miners and the normal miners, or the amazing miners, is their trading desk. Just like an oil company will be able to time that stock and then how to exit so that they can have excess buying power. Because if you were able to sell, because I do this as a miner on my end, on a small scale, obviously, compared to what you guys do, but like, if Bitcoin's at 50 plus, I'm like, okay, now is probably the time that I should buy something with using Bitcoin, right? Instead of using cash.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to sell a little bit now, knowing I have a cash need next month, and I don't know where Bitcoin's going to go, so I have to take a safety kind of DCA out approach. And I think that's really where you have the game within the game, right?
Totally.
That's layers on layers. That's the rabbit hole, the science of that. But on top of that, now we have regulation and all these other things. It's an attack vector. You guys are in New York, right? But you guys are all over the place.
Yep.
So how do you guys manage being all over the place? Just broadly, you don't have to get too specific. But.
The great part about the mining business is that it's super local, right? Like we're not, it's not like some big conglomerate. It's like, hey, there's a local contractor and a local electrician and a local, group, and we're very sort of embedded at that level. And so to me, like, the opportunity is to demonstrate why Bitcoin is great by bringing a business that has a really different profile than a lot of the business, and this is like rural, right?
Yeah.
It's very, it's very unusual for a business like ours or like any miner to come to a region that's so rural and to be a technology business in that area. Facebook isn't building a data center there.
Right.
You can't build a big car manufacturing plant there because guess what? You need access to the interstate. You need access to you need access to all this sort of
physical
planning, resourcing, and access. And so you look at the load on the power side that we represent. Let's just say 10 or 25 megawatt, whatever it is. That's the biggest power deal that community has ever seen. that's as big, it's
And
as
it's a
big as like
long-term
5
commit.
Walmarts.
Yeah, and it's a long-term commit too, right?
And we're going to stay there for as long as they'll have us. And so it's this very unusual dynamic where a business like this doesn't usually come to a town like, what's a girl like you doing in a bar like this?
Yeah.
Kind of dynamic.
I like that.
And so we really try to lean into that and make it exciting to have a Bitcoin company in that region and make Bitcoin cool. So do the meetup, join the Better Business Bureau, do the blocking and tackling that makes you a good neighbor.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things, that you've got these massive mining companies. You're part of one. There's a lot that are represented here today. There's a lot that we're friends with that are running. Some of them are publicly traded. Some of them are purposely not publicly traded. But one of the beauties of Bitcoin is it's really money for the people. And I've always felt like putting mining just even in individuals' hands, so that we can even run our own nodes. How do you suggest somebody that just wants to run a node, earn a little Bitcoin on the side, compete with the big guys? How can you even break in? Because what we don't want to do is say, well, because you have all these big players out there, they're going to squash the little guy. We don't want it to be just in the hands of a few. We want everybody to be able to participate. So how can people even participate in mining if they wanted to?
I think that, you can buy a rig and put it in your garage.
Absolutely.
That's totally viable.
Yeah.
Are your margins going to be the same as a fully scaled industrial player? No. But
But are you outperforming the price you would have to pay on an exchange for that Bitcoin?
Potentially.
That's really where
and you're receiving that Bitcoin in a different manner.
Yeah.
So earning Bitcoin that you mine is different than buying Bitcoin on an exchange.
Yeah.
Your cost basis resets every single day.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether Bitcoin went up or not, you got more sats and all you had to do was pay your power bill. So there's that piece of it that I think is like, you can just do it, right? Like, why do we run a node? Because we care about participating in the Bitcoin network and using Bitcoin to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Why do we buy a miner and plug it in? Because it's a way for us to participate in the Bitcoin network. It's a way to vote with our hash, not vote with our feet.
Yeah.
But I want to go further on that, which is that while you get some great cost economies of scale, you get to have access to cheaper hardware and maybe cheaper power, but we lose some things like the sort of the homebrew innovation stuff. So maybe we don't want to build at scale heat recapture, but like for you to like pipe some of that heat into your forced air heating system, you're going to get that benefit. I can't build that.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of the opportunity to innovate on the homebrew level is you may achieve different outcomes at home than we can achieve at an industrial site, and like you should,
because you have heat as a resource on a small scale. Like there's a guy that has a cold air intake from a car, like a Chevy engine, on his S9, and he's using the heat from the S9 to like dry out beef jerky, which is like hilarious, right?
Yes.
He's got like a wet towel as a filter to catch whatever sort of like dust that washes through there. He's literally like curing beef jerky with his ASIC heat. There's a guy, and that type of like homebrew thing, right? Like what Coin Heated does.
Yeah.
Where he's like heating pools and stuff like that. I met with him at a mining conference a couple of months ago, I guess, and I was like, man, it'd be great to some of these cold weather universities to like heat their pools. Like throw a couple S19s. They
That's brilliant, by the way.
You know what I mean? Like, because they need a heated pool at the college, right, to do swimming or whatever in the off season, right? It's
no doubt.
And he was like, "Oh, that's great. I like it." But he's such a savant when it comes to like actually like solving the riddle. You know what I mean? That he doesn't have like a corporate guy going out there like getting him deals. And I was like, in a way, I was like, "Hey, man, I could probably get you some deals." You know what I mean? Because like that's my thing as like a car sales guy. Like I'll introduce you to some people, see what happens. But like. Energy is it's a touchy subject for some people, right? And I hate that it's a touchy subject because it's simple. We need more energy.
Yes.
We need to use energy. Energy is quality of life.
Yes.
Direct relationship. That's it. The gallon of water, the kilowatt hour are like your access to clean water and your access to power are the two things that define the quality of your life. If you don't have either of those things, what are you doing? Like what does your life look like? And that's like, it's hard for some people to conceptualize it, but on the smallest, most granular level, that is a fundamental truth, I think, and we need to build from that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I want to put us on a spectrum, right? We all live on spectrums. So, on this side is the electricity that gets utilized to run an MRI machine or a dialysis machine or something that like everyone says it's worth it.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Nobody is saying, I'm really sorry. Your dialysis machine does not check our ESG box. We need you to shut that down. You can't get treatment today.
Yeah, that's right.
No one's saying that.
Right.
And over here, we're saying, and this is a well-used example, but like Christmas lights, I don't think everybody agrees that that's a responsible use of energy based on the frameworks that have been offered.
Right.
I might take the perspective that
or Elizabeth Warren on a private jet. I mean, you shouldn't be flying a private jet. Uses
You're a
a lot of
public
energy,
servant.
right? Yeah. You should, you should be grounded. You should never be able to be allowed on a plane.
But so
but
ornamental
these are-
use of electricity.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
And then-
so like
and then
total
mechanical use, yeah.
like vanity use, right?
Yeah.
Life-saving use and vanity use.
Yeah.
This is where Bitcoin is in the conversation today.
Because of the way a lot of people look at Bitcoin, because they don't understand the
value.
freedom, the monetary value, the security,
Exactly.
Yeah.
all these things,
Exactly.
censorship resistance.
And my argument is that Bitcoin's a lot more like a dialysis machine than a Christmas ornament.
Yeah.
I think I can help you with that argument, because I think like going in to talk to some of these like boomer, senators and stuff like that, just be like, hey, just think about it this way. Like, what if this life-saving technology was shut off? What would happen to you at that point?
Right.
And then utilize that to say like, hey, in the future, because of the success of Bitcoin, right, the network is going to grow.
Yeah.
Yes.
The user base will grow.
Yes.
The financial value of locked into that user base will grow.
Yeah.
And therefore, the personal security, personal safety, and quality of life for all these people, which we all believe is going to go up as a result of being Bitcoin, safety, friendly, whatever, all that stuff. We need to make Bitcoin the dialysis machine for money. It's the filter. It has to be that thing. That's a great lens. We can go be like, hey, boomer, you know how you need medical treatment? What if you weren't allowed it because you didn't have your electricity allocation? We need more electricity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's like nobody's going after Google or Amazon for using all of their servers for people to they don't say,
YouTube
hey,
videos.
you should shut it down because only thing people do on the internet is watch cat videos and play Sudoku or play solitaire, which a lot of people do that, right?
That's
Is
reality.
that,
Yeah.
It's that's not necessarily use of energy,
Yeah.
But that's not happening.
And the reality is, Bitcoin is a wildly useful piece of software.
That's right.
And
by the way, it's free to download. Yeah.
That's right.
exactly.
Open
And
source.
it is an open source, peer-to-peer electronic cash system that in the future, in the future there's going to be a grocery store transaction, and you run to the grocery store. It's food for your young children, and you get into the checkout line. You get to the front of the checkout line, and the only way that you can walk out of the store with food for your family is a Lightning invoice.
Yep.
And if we don't spend the time to invest in the economic backbone that is the mining infrastructure that sits behind the security model, if we don't invest in that and continue to make it clear that the value proposition is inextricable from the consumption of energy, we don't get to the front of the checkout line and get out of the store.
Yeah.
Well, even breaking it down further, I mean, look, there's a lot of people that work around the world to feed their families. And places like Western Union absolutely rips them off, right?
Yes.
It's like you work really hard for that money. You're taking jobs, even in the U.S., that nobody else wants, right? And you're working hard for that money, and you're trying to send it back to your family in another country so that they can eat. And you go to Western Union, you're like, yeah, I'm going to take 30%. It's like, okay.
Wow. It's egregious because now we get it all back to this other thing, which is like the framing of the argument is always, oh, Bitcoin uses this much equivalent energy, and it's like, well, per transaction or whatever, which is obviously all BS, right? And then there's the counter argument that I made recently to somebody on Twitter. I had like a thread about it, and I said, oh well, I sent this much Bitcoin and I paid like 7 cents. I paid 7 cents. So you tell me where paying 7 cents gets me 73 days of electricity. That's what I want to know. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you want to argue like that? I'll argue like that right back in your face. Like, there's no chance you're paying 7 cents for 70 days of electricity. Like, I live in California. Our kilowatt per hour, we're almost at the point where we have to start measuring in dollars as opposed to cents. Because we're at 42 cents at peak or 44 cents for peak now in California, which is egregious. It's like 3 times, 4 times what it is at almost every other residential area everywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
But it's bad energy policy is getting Europe in trouble right now, obviously. Bad energy policy. We see it. Bitcoiners see it writing on the walls. bad energy policy is bad economic policy, you know, and we're in that position, you know, where we can see that and say that, and we're ringing the bell, and we're all ringing the same bell, you know, but they think we're just being vanity, and they don't understand the dialysis, you know, versus Christmas lights spectrum thing, and I think it's important that we really get together, you know, and sort of unionize in that regard, and say, hey, this is we're going to push it like Taproot. Like, we're just going to push it through. Like, everybody agrees, all the Bitcoiners understand it.
Yes.
So now we need to literally, like, get that message, and, like, that's our thing. You know what I mean?
I think about Bitcoin as a collective bargaining tool a lot of the time, where, you know, what we are doing with loose and rough consensus is that we're actually just collectively bargaining for, you know, like, prosperity. And we're doing it quietly now, and over time we'll do it a little less quietly.
Right.
Yeah.
But we need more companies to grow and kind of push. And I think like as a miner, you know, looking at it and then thinking about how some of these really big miners do it, and like being a little bit jealous in a way, you know, because of course it's like everyone's like, oh, I wish I had more hash rate. It's like, yeah, sure, but think about what goes along with that, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of responsibility. But the coolest thing about mining and the way it works now, because of the pure competition, right? We're also competing with like pure weapons at that point. Like I'm not Jason Lowry. I'm going to take that word back. Take weapons out of it. Pure tools. The S19s that you buy and I buy and then he buys are all the same. The What's miners that I buy, you buy, he buy, they're all the same, right? Like no one gets like the special hot rod version, you know, from the factory. If you want to hot rod your stuff, go for it, right? You want to run some different operating system or something like that, go ahead. At risk, at your own risk, right? So there's like there's some things that obviously work really well, but there's other things that you're trying to, like, you know, monetize, you know, like the waste heat, and you can say, oh, well, we're using waste heat for this, so it's like that. There's so many ways that people can innovate because of this open source, open competition, honest competition, that we all have to look at each other and say, how are you getting that many terahashes out of your machine? You know, how are you getting this many? How are you holding this much Bitcoin? How are you paying so little? How are you peak shaving? And you're like, and it gets back to like chefs. Really good chefs publish cookbooks. None of them is worried that someone's going to go and steal their recipes. They're putting it out there. Wolfgang Puck's like, I dare you. I dare you. This is how I do it. This is my pasta, my pizza, my steak, my chicken. Go for it, bro.
Yeah.
I dare you to learn how to run a restaurant.
Yeah.
I dare you how to learn how to source ingredients.
That's a really
I'll teach
good
you
point.
how to cut it.
Yeah.
I'll teach you how to cook it. I'll teach you what to put in it. But like you still can't beat me.
Yeah.
In that way. So like I, as a pleb miner, I'm not gonna like outmine like some of these other companies. I might get more innovative with the total energy use, right? And I might net more because I don't need to spend as much because maybe I have a better capture device or something like that. But that's where it's fun. That's why it's cool. And these like edge use cases, whether it's like a weird like, I mean, people we're putting out content now as an industry. People are seeing it. Like, there's like the Navajo Nation is mining and like all this stuff. And there's like somebody's using like S17s in like Ecuador to like, you know, burn off methane that's developing from like a sewage plant locally in a city. All these things are great, but it's because there's a financial incentive, which is a pure signal. You know.
I want to go one layer closer on that, which is that what mining has done is it's democratized revenue.
Yes.
Yep.
And so earning one sat here is the same as one sat everywhere else.
Yeah.
We aren't exporting our inflation with this anymore. And so what we're used to, why do we get so much cheap stuff? It's because we've exported a lot of inflation.
Yeah.
Into other people's cost of labor, into other people's lack of regulation, into other people's, you know, bad business practice. We've exported that.
Yeah.
And what we've imported are cheap goods. What Bitcoin can do, and we may have to pay more for nice things. This is a reality that I've digested.
Yeah.
But in exchange for that, we've democratized revenue.
I think that is the ending note right there.
I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you, guys.
us.
Thanks, man. This
Great
is
to see you, meet you. Awesome.
All right, so Bitcoin bottom line from Miami. More guests, more stuff.
More content,
More
more
sats.
fun.